try and align your application if possible with what the UK wants. So if you know their policy and their priorities at this point in time, and you can align your work with that and state that very clearly in your personal statement. So for example, what I did was the recent white paper that came out in May this year on immigration, which was not very good news to a lot of immigrants, unfortunately, but there is a specific place in there that talks about the global talent visa, and it specifically mentions what they're looking for, which fields they are interested in, and that they're specifically looking to actually bring more people in via the global talent route.
All right, welcome everyone. It's Immigrant, Voices and Victories. You're welcome. Your platform to learn, connect, and get inspired. And today I'm so excited to be hosting Sabeehah here on Immigrant, Voices and Victories, because this 2025, she was listed as one of the 100 brilliant women in AI ethics, and she's a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. She's a researcher at the Alan Turing Institute with over 3 years of experience. Guess what? She was endorsed by the British Academy without a PhD. Trust me, you're about to hear everything about it. Thank you so much, Sabeehah, for honoring this invite.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
If you're new to this channel, we always share, different immigrants' journey on this platform. We talk about life in the UK. So join our community. Like, share, subscribe if this is your first time here. And trust me, you're about to get inspired. So let's start. Sabeehah, can you tell us a bit about your background so we know where you're coming from before you were endorsed? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm South African. I grew up in South Africa, studied in South Africa, and my background, surprisingly, is actually pure in the humanities. So I did my bachelor's in the humanities in South Africa, and also my first postgrad degree in SA. I then came over to the UK to do my MSc in digital humanities at UCL in London. That was back in 2019. And that really was my interdisciplinary degree, which was between the humanities and DAC. And then I started working in research, specifically in the space of AI ethics and policy. So in terms of my academic qualifications, my highest level is an MSc. As you mentioned, I don't have a PhD, and I've been working since then.
Wow. So how did you hear about the Global Talent Visa?
It's come up a couple of times, to be honest. And the very first time I heard about it, I looked it up and I thought, no, well, I don't qualify for this. And this was probably, I'd say, like in the first year of when I started working. And one of the reasons was that my understanding was that you needed quite a senior position, a work title, to actually qualify. And there's the fast track options. And of course, none of those also applied to me. And so, I just didn't really look into it again. And as a researcher, you're usually on fixed term contracts. And unfortunately, that's not great for job security. And so being on a work visa meant that I was often in the situation where I had to either be looking for another position, or I, was doing short-term contract renewals and subsequently visa renewals. And so quite a lot of other people were also in a similar situation, and a wonderful work colleague organized an information session at my workplace all about the global talent visa route. And this was both for peer review as well as technician. And this person brought in other people within our workplace who had applied for these routes, one from technician, one from peer review, to share their experience. And also, they did manage to bring someone in from the Royal Academy of Engineering into the room to answer any questions that people had. And I think that was really helpful because we got to ask questions, especially people who didn't have PhDs. And I think from that point onwards, I got a much better understanding. I started looking into it seriously myself. And that's essentially why I went for the Global Talent Visa, is because it does give you more job security in terms of like where you're going to live. If you want a work visa and your work contract is coming to an end, you have a limited number of time before you have to leave the country and that sort of thing. The Global Talent Visa obviously gives you a lot of security, and also gives you freedom and flexibility in terms of taking up additional work outside of your main role. So those were the two reasons why I decided to apply for the Global Talent Visa.
Wow. So working in the Alan Turing Institute, I would have thought you would apply for technician. I was actually going to get to that, to say, why the British Academy? I thought if you are in Alan Turing, you should be strictly applying through the technician. So why the British Academy then?
The honest reason, the cost. I honestly, I think it was a 50-50. Like I could go either way. And from any advice that I got, I was told that, look, either one, I could probably go down either pathway. I knew quite a few people who did go through the technician pathway at my workplace and were quite successful. I'll probably get into that a bit later on in a bit more detail. But in terms of like the peer review, people were rather telling me that they were less confident in whether or not I would succeed via peer review without a PhD. And they were strongly suggesting I go through technician instead. I mean, doing this myself also, and as an early career researcher, the cost of technician it's almost double or more than going through peer review. And so I just thought, well, let me just try. If it doesn't work out, I can try technician afterwards. That's the honest answer.
Love it, love it. No, actually, I think with technician, you need possibly 10 pieces of documents. And then with the peer review route, you just need your personal statement, your recommendation letter, and then your CV. As simple as it sounds, I'm sure you will tell us it's not. Yeah. So when you learned about the endorsement requirements, did it seem achievable?
Without a PhD, I had a lot of doubt. Like I said, initially, when I looked at the global talent visa, I thought I didn't even qualify. And it was really being able to learn more about it that then I changed my mind and said, okay, well, maybe there's a chance. Without a PhD, if you look online, you look on Reddit, you see what people are saying, like other people's experiences. You're lucky if you probably find even one or two people who might say they were endorsed without a PhD. And so I knew that this was taking a bit of a chance. I didn't really know whether it's achievable or not. Of course, I kept my positive mindset, and I believed, and I gave it my everything. But I also wanted to manage expectations and know that this was something that it could go either way, and especially because somebody with my background, as well as I'm not in pure academia. I'm in the Ellington Institute, and my work is primarily policy based as well, and I don't have a PhD, and so. I just gave it my best. Yeah, just see what happens. But I think just going back to that work information session and you were asking like whether or not I thought this was achievable. Then why that work information session was so important is because there were two things that were shared there. And this was in terms of the research experience or equivalent research experience that is listed as a requirement of receiving the global talent visa through peer review. But it's not clarified what equivalent experience means, right? Just as PhD or equivalent experience. And so there was a definition that was shared with us from the Royal Academy of Engineering. I have it, and I'm going to read it out. So if it's beneficial for anyone. And so it says the equivalent research experience to a PhD means significant time spent leading and undertaking research. This would entail at least 3 years consolidated research time where the applicant has been the intellectual drive behind a project and achieved strong demonstrable outputs from their research experience. This would include, for example, working in industry, holding a clinical post with dedicated research time, or working in other academic and non-academic settings, or having pursued a non-traditional academic career path. Clinical practice without demonstrable research achievements is not considered, and being at the final stages of a PhD does not qualify as equivalent research experience, nor does work undertaken during PhD studies. So that was the one definition that was very, very helpful. Then the other definition was explaining, well, what does exceptional promise or early career mean? And this was explained as applicants who demonstrate potential to contribute significantly in their research field, etc., and is typically towards the start of their career or on a steep trajectory. It also says that the route does not specify a minimum number of years of research experience in recognition of differences in people's career pathways and progression. So that was very helpful because, yes, I don't have a PhD, but they've now given us it's written into confirmation. It's not sort of hearsay that years, you have to have the 3 year, you have to at least have 3 years of work experience. And so I just had to wait until I got my 3 years of consolidated research experience. And then I knew, okay, at least I meet that requirement. And so that gave me more confidence in that, yes, maybe this would be achievable.
Wow, that is so great. Exactly what was said there is exactly what is on the Royal Society website. So you took it out from there and now you are endorsed. So tell us how you went about it. What steps did you take?
Well, the first thing is recognizing the differences between technician and peer review, because when you looking online and you're trying to understand what do you need to do, there's a lot of overlap when you look online and people are sort of confused in the beginning. And so just sort of separating out the differences. But yeah, in terms of the requirements, I mean, there's the standard what they ask for, right? The CV, the personal statement, and the letters of recommendation. And so I'd say, the first thing was making sure that I've got 3 years work experience, like research experience, and that needs to be on your CV. So making sure I've clocked in exactly 3 years. The other thing was in terms of what goes on the application. So I'll just sort of talk about those things first. So that's your personal statement, your list of applications. And so for the personal statement, worked on it, got people to look over it, peers to give me feedback. reworked it many, many times. The thing I'd say with a personal statement is that initially I was spending a lot of time on it, but later on I focused a lot more on the CV instead of the personal statement. The character limit is also quite difficult because it's 1,000 characters, including spaces, and trying to pack in a lot there it's quite a challenge. But one of the useful feedbacks I've got was that my LinkedIn bio was to one person actually read better than the personal statement. And the reason they gave me is that the LinkedIn bio was just simple, easy to read. It had all the information, and it was like you read it immediately, you get an idea of what this person is doing. Whereas I think initially with the personal statement, it was quite dense. And so I changed that. And the first paragraph also of the personal statement, I made sure that it's really catching, anything like sort of I want to highlight certain companies or certain organizations I worked with, or anything sort of that you'd say, is really important to you. It's like your hook. That's what I made sure was in the first paragraph. So I did that, and then towards the end of the personal statement, focused a lot on plans in the UK and future plans in the UK. And you've done great videos on the personal statement. And then in terms of like publications, that was selecting the top 10 publications that I think would be the best, a mixture of both academic and policy. My work is not 100% academic based, so I've got a lot more policy publications actually than I'd say in academic journals. And so it was just deciding which ones do I think would be most impactful, and that's not always easy. I also took the risk and I included some preprints, which I think was fine, because in your CV you can indicate there that this is under review at this so and so journal, which I thought was fine. It also shows that you're doing research; it's ongoing research. And then in terms of choosing the right endorsing body, so on the application you have to put in your field of talent and etc. and choosing it. And again, you've done a good video on this. And my work is very interdisciplinary. So it's AI ethics and policy. And most people in my workplace were going through the Royal Academy of Engineering. But when I read this very well, I felt like my work is primarily research and policy based. It's not completely technical. So it's not building the actual systems, which is more aligned with Royal Academy of Engineering. And so I contacted directly the representative of Royal Academy of Engineering, who was attended our workplace, and I reached out and I explained, this is my work, in a brief summary, please advise me. And they have representatives at all the endorsing bodies. They've got representatives who deal primarily with global talent. So just sort of reached out and said, do you suggest I apply through your endorsing body? And she directed me instead to British Academy. And she said, it sounds like my work's more aligned. I then got in touch with the British Academy, and they confirmed, and they said, that sounds fine, that my work is aligned. And I think, just one piece of advice there is also don't get too hung up. Don't spend too much time worrying about it, because I learned that endorsing bodies can actually send your application to another endorsing body if they think it is more better suited there. Yeah, so that's also fine. And like listing your field of talent and your academic field, choose one from the list. But your field of talent, you can write what you think represents your work best. And that's sort of what I did. So so then in terms of the documents that I attached alongside the application, so the CV, the CV takes a lot of work. I used the full 3 pages, reworked it many, many times. I got people to review it, give me feedback. A couple of tips I'd say here is, keep everything to under 5 years. So I had done some work back in South Africa that was longer than 5 years ago, so I removed that from my CV. I kept everything to sort of my time in the UK, because that was most relevant to my application. I worked on that initial summary, at the top of your CV, making sure that summary captures the most important things, and getting links like Google Scholar, LinkedIn, all the standard. Again, you've done a good video on the CV. So I was keeping up to date with your videos, because I was actually applying at the same time you released your video. So
you sent me a WhatsApp message asking me, when are you releasing the personal statement and recommendation letter video? I was like, what? A confidence that this lady has. And interestingly, the videos were ready, but I work full time, like I always say, and I just got an editor. So when you sent me that message, please, can you tell me, Dr. Yemz, when you're releasing the personal? I'm like, wow, this lady is.
It shows how eager we are waiting for your content, right? So I knew you had mentioned you're going to, so I was keeping an eye out on it, and I mean, of course I subscribed to the channel, and definitely I was attending all of your live sessions and everything. So I mean, all of that was very, very helpful. And I'd say in terms of the letters of recommendation, I definitely focused a lot on that, because they only ask for one letter of recommendation for exceptional promise, but I attached more. So I actually reached out to, I think, 5 or 6 people for letters. I knew that maybe 1 or 2 might come back to say that they were not able to, or maybe they wouldn't be able to get it to me in time. And also I just thought it would be more helpful if I had, more than less, and I can read through them and maybe even decide which ones do I think was the strongest if I wanted to make that decision. And so in the end, I ended up attaching 4 letters of recommendation. One was obviously on the application you have to choose one, and so that was the main letter of recommendation. And I selected that in terms of seniority of the positions and titles of the individuals. The person who I did select as my first letter of recommendation was actually an elected fellow of the British Academy, and was also the director of my department at my workplace. And she was a professor as well at the Oxford Internet Institute. She definitely had seniority and was an eminent person in my field and was familiar with my work. So she was my main letter of recommendation. And then I had subsequently another 3 letters. I know it's not really traditional. A lot of people do that, but I sort of took a chance and tried that.
Did you just randomly email people for a recommendation letter? Because I know that's something a lot of people struggle with. Did you just randomly email people, or what was your criteria for, selecting someone eminent to write a recommendation letter?
So I did think about in terms of the individual credibility and positions, but I also looked at people who would understand and know my work. And so that really was looking at my workplace, because those were the people who were most familiar with my work. And I approached them directly in that I met with them. So it was either in person or online. I had a meeting and I explained to them why I was applying to the Global Talent Visa if they were not yet familiar with it. Actually, all of them were, because at my work, like I said, at my workplace, a lot of people were applying. And so they were quite familiar and they understood how helpful it would be. And the benefit that it would give people in terms of job security and etc. And so I think I was really lucky in that they were very supportive because of that. But I did meet them in person, and I followed up with an email thereafter with more information. So this part is a little tricky, because some people can ask you to write the letter and then send it to them, and they'll edit it and maybe sign it. And I would strongly advise not to do that, because it really needs to be in the voice of that person. If you write it yourself, you can somehow tell. If you get your GPT to write it and send it, and like they can tell. And they strongly advise against it. Like very many people say, if they even suspect that, they can reject your application, that if you had influenced it. At most, a few people did ask for maybe a couple of bullet points, and that's fine. I put a couple of bullet points about key projects that maybe I worked on, things like that, pointing them to the direction. When you're approaching people, though, they're all really busy. They have a lot of things that's going on, and you have your own timeline that you're working on. And so mentioning to them and explaining to them if you are on a tight deadline can be really helpful. And one thing I found that did also help was that I mentioned to them that, is it okay if I check in with you in like 2 to 3 weeks time, so that if I haven't received an email, or however long, like if I haven't received anything from them, it's okay, like for me to send another email. You don't have to feel like you nagging the person, or you kind of inconveniencing the person. And sometimes they actually ask, like, please, can you drop me an email in a few weeks time to remind me, because they are busy and they are taking out the time to write something for you. So those were kind of the ways that I approached the people and got it. I must say, though, that not everybody was able to, and that's totally fine. I think that's also understandable. I just didn't take it personally.
Wow, that's good. So tell us about your resources. Because you're now successful, you were endorsed, as an exceptional promise by the British Academy. Tell us, what were the resources that you used to put up your application and successfully get endorsed?
Well, one of the first resources that I looked at was your videos. Those were very helpful, and that's why
you requested for them as well.
Yes. I mean, I knew it was coming up, right? So you had said you're going to publish this soon, so I was eagerly waiting for it.
Okay.
I also reached out to people who I knew had applied, not a lot, just a few people, and who were successful. And I asked them personally on a one-to-one basis if they would be comfortable sharing maybe this, a personal statement or a letter of recommendation, at least at the very beginning. For me, that really helped in just getting an idea of, well, how does someone write a personal statement? And or even if I'm asking people for letter of recommendation, what should it say? Of course, everyone knows the idea, like what you should ask for, but just to actually see what someone else used and was successful in the application gives you a bit of an idea of the level at which your documentation needs to be at. So that's something I did. Also, at my workplace, I started a group for people who are applying for global talent visas, and it was just sort of informal chats, and we would all like share updates or ask if we weren't sure about something, we'd ask questions. That was also quite helpful. And just looking online, reading up online as much as I could. I got resources in terms of human resources, so people in my network to look over my application, give me their honest feedback. Yeah, there were one or two people who I did work very closely with who helped me to sort of pull some of all my documentation and my work all together. So I'd say those were probably the things that I use. I didn't use anything else.
Well, that's very good, actually. I'm so excited that my videos were helpful and so many other people. So if you're out there, you've used my videos, you've been successful. At least I was able to, catch Sabeehah because she requested it. So I was on her case to know when she was getting it. But if you're out there and you've gotten the visa, you've used my videos, please let us know how you got it. Thank you so much, Sabeehah, for sharing all of this, tips with us. Looking back, is there anything you wish you would have done better in your application? Do you think you should have gone another way, or just looking back in hindsight?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think it was okay. I think I just maybe would have budgeted a bit more time in terms of be more realistic with the timeline. You can't do the global talent visa in a week, maybe not even a month. And I thought I was going to get it all done within like 2 months or so, but it will take longer. You also have to budget time for asking for your letters of recommendation, it coming back. Maybe you would want to request 1 or 2 edits, which is totally fine. I'd encourage you to maybe also do that, and that sort of back and forth. And so all of it takes a lot of time. So just being a bit more realistic maybe, so that you don't feel like you not keeping to that timeline and then you put yourself under more pressure. I think that's maybe the one thing, is just take it a bit easy on yourself. It's a lot of work. Mentally it's a bit exhausting, emotionally it can be a bit much as well. So just taking care of yourself. If you holding on a job, you're doing other things, and you're also working on this, it does take a lot of effort.
Oh, that's good. What would be your advice for an aspiring applicant of the UK Global Talent Visa?
Well, one is looking at like other people who have applied and using that in conjunction with what is listed on the websites of what's required. Because I think that would put a lot of context in terms of whether or not you feel you resonate with it. Just looking at only the requirements, it can be a bit overwhelming, can be confusing. You may or may not know exactly, do you stand a chance? I'd also say that imposter syndrome is a real thing. So you're probably better than you think you are. And I think we especially us, like who are immigrants, I think it's much easier for us to fall into that trap of imposter syndrome. And so just go for it. Just try. If it's something you want, you know it's going to have a specific benefit to you and to your life, then try it. The global talent visa, there is a cost. The peer review route, it is about £560 to apply for endorsement. I'd say that's really what you're gambling with, is the time to put it in and the cost. And that's how I thought about it, because you're not going to pay your health surcharge. You're not going to pay any of that after, like you'll only pay for it later on if you get the endorsement. And so really, I'd say it just comes down to whether or not you really want to, you really want it. And if you meet the main requirements, definitely I'd encourage you to apply for it. Any other tips I'd say is, I had one challenge in seeking professional advice. So initially I wasn't sure whether or not I could do this whole application on my own. And I did seek out advice through a lawyer. This was, I got told by the lawyer that they recommended I go through technician, and they were less confident in me going through peer review, because they were not sure whether or not my research would be considered on a postdoc level, because I don't have a PhD. And I think hearing that from a lawyer did feel quite demotivating initially, especially because you think that, well, these people, they'd know better than I would, right? So yeah, no.
Not global talent visa. I'm sorry to all the lawyers out there. By the way, disclaimer, I'm not an immigration advisor, by the way, but when it comes to UK Global Talent Visa, it's a professional visa. And I'm sure you know by now that, by the time you're giving a lawyer to read and tell you something about your career. And that's why, I always tell people, Global Talent Visa is all about you. Everything. if you ever come to my sessions, I'm asking you questions. I'm making you think. I'm asking you what you've done. What are your research experiences? Because it's all about you. It's all about you. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. You would know your work the best. And lawyers, it can be very, very, very expensive. And so again, I think it's sometimes that imposter syndrome. Like, do you think I can do this on my own? Will I manage? I don't know where to start with the application, but it's very, very costly. And like you say, sometimes they don't even understand the route very well. So I would say trust yourself on this one. Reach out to networks. Like, you've got a great WhatsApp group also. So reach out to people instead, people who have that experience or who were either in your field or had applied for the global talent visa. The other thing I'd also add is build up a very strong evidence base, especially if someone like me who didn't have a PhD. So I knew where my research was published, for example, whether it's academic or policy based, but it's really difficult sometimes to track impact of policy afterwards. So who picked up your paper and what did they do with it, and how has it influenced anyone? So I did some deep research to try and find that out and used that to support my application. So you show me that your research has been used, or your research has been, you're going to put conferences and presentations and those sort of things as well. And one tip here I'd give for someone who is applying is I used different AI tools, Gen AI tools as well, to help me track those down. So if somebody cited my work somewhere and it wasn't picked up on Google Scholar, for example, I found out where was this, and I looked at whether this was credible or not. Like what is the impact of that output? And I used that, and I put, because I didn't even know that actually my research was used here, was cited in these places. So that was something that you might be pleasantly surprised. Also, another advice would be in terms of asking for letters of recommendation. Don't be afraid to follow up. Like I was saying earlier, if someone says that they will write it for you and then you don't hear from them, just respectfully follow up again in like a week or two. And don't be afraid to ask for changes to the letter of recommendation. Most often they might even tell you, like, let me know if you want any changes, and that's fine. You can even suggest it in a couple of sentences to make it easier for them. And at the end of your process, be sure to thank the people who supported you. That's another advice I'd give, because it's not a journey you generally do alone. There's going to be other people along the way, somehow or the other, that are going to support you. So be sure to go back and thank all of them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for thanking me, because I received my thank you note from Sabeehah for my videos, and thank you for thanking me. I really appreciate it. Well, I've never heard that advice, like, go back and thank people that, helped you up. And that's it. We can't deal without one another. Building a community is so important, even as immigrants. And, that's why Immigrant Voices and Victories is here to share people's story, like that of Sabeehah, like, so many others we've shared on this channel, just to inspire you. Like Sabeehah said, you're better than you actually think you are.
In terms of advice, one last thing I'd say is try and align your application, if possible, with what the UK wants. So if you know their policy and their priorities at this point in time, and you can align your work with that would, and state that very clearly in your personal statement. So for example, what I did was the recent white paper that came out in May this year on immigration, which was not very good news to a lot of immigrants, unfortunately, but there is a specific place in there that talks about the global talent visa, and it specifically mentions what they're looking for, which fields they are interested in, and that they're specifically looking to actually bring more people in via the global talent route. So I aligned my work, because I'm in AI research, and so I specifically stated the white paper in my personal statement and said that my work aligns with that. So, you might be in a different field and it might align with something else that the UK government's interested in. I'd strongly suggest specifically stating it in your personal statement.
Yes, that is very important. You cannot even write a personal statement under the peer review route and not state the UK impact. That is why you are being endorsed. What is the impact of your work in the UK? In my, one-on-one sessions, I always tell people, tell me, where does your work fit in the UK? Go on Google, go and search your work and see how it impacts. You need to find those strategies, those policies, whatever at all. Wow. I think if you watch just this video and a couple of other of my videos to get more insights, you're good to go for peer review route. Sabeehah has broken everything down. So I'm just going to pick you up on, the imposter syndrome as immigrants and all of that. And I just wanted to ask, what are you most proud of as an immigrant in the UK?
I think I'd say my resilience to push through the tough times and to continue anyway. I think almost every immigrant I've met, we've got stories. Oh, we can tell you stories of difficult situations we've been in, especially I think the beginning of when you first arrive. It can be the most challenging. And hold on and persevere through that time, things do get better. They do for a lot of people. And I think that would be one of the things I'm most proud of. And we might all have negative experiences, and that could also be fortunately from other people around here. But knowing that one negative experience doesn't color everyone the same way. So, being open-minded, meeting other people who are different from you, have completely different backgrounds. Always being respectful, because we are ambassadors for where we come from, our identities, whether nationality, religion, ethnicity, whatever it is, we are ambassadors in our own way. And so when you met somebody who's very different from you, local or otherwise, and you leave them and they think, well, the next time I meet somebody from South Africa or Nigeria or wherever, and yeah, I know someone from there, and they were a great person, and you leave them with that impression, and you have that opportunity to shape the perceptions of people within your own space. And as immigrants now more than ever, I think that's so important.
Wow, awesome. I love it. You're most proud of your resilience. And the final and last question. This is a question we always ask everyone that comes on board Immigrant Voices and Victories. What is your advice for immigrants in the UK?
I think I've said a little bit of it already.
I know, I was going to say.
But I did two things. One is, don't be shy to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself sometimes, and go for it. Some of us comes from cultures and communities where if you do advocate for yourself, it's almost seen as a bad thing, and yeah, it's not. Like, you have to, you should actually. Then it will be better for you if you do advocate for yourself. Don't expect someone else to do it for you. The other thing I'd say is, take time to understand the financial system, tax, pension, understanding these things. It's going to benefit you and your loved ones in the long term. So take a little bit of time out. We're all working really hard, but this is a very important part of that as well.
Wow. Take time to understand the tax system. Be an ambassador wherever you go. Love it, love it, love it. And these are the advice, from Sabeehah today. Thank you so much, Sabeehah, for coming on board Immigrant Voices and Victories. It's been a wonderful interview, and we can't wait to celebrate more of you. You've just been listed as one of the, 100 women in AI, There's more to come, and we can't wait, to celebrate you in the nearest future. Thank you so much for, sharing all your tips about the Global Talent Visa. Sabeehah was endorsed as an exceptional promise under, the Research and Academia category of the UK Global Talent Visa by the British Academy. Another recipient added to the so many more to come. So keep watching Immigrant Voices and Victories. Go watch my videos. You can hear the testimonies and all these videos. They are here on YouTube. Just sit down with them, take notes, and trust me, you will be the next Sabeehah. We'll be sharing their story. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. God bless you. Bye. No limits.